This week on the video version of the business of tech, the uncertainty of the future for SMBs with a new pace of change, jobs data, worker sentiment, and filling the gaps. What's next? Microsoft changes their tune on right to repair, coming investments and disruption in the MSP market. We look at market sizes for software audits, IT services, and managed services, plus office parties, White House meetings, and more. Hit that like and subscribe button, and here are this week's stories. On Friday, I forgot Monday was a holiday and that I had actually scheduled the day off. And as the U.S. returns to a full workday today, there's more discussion about what's next. Grant Thornton asked office workers and professional services jobs about their return. 56% are looking forward to returning, and 40% said they'd seek another job if forced to return full-time. Over two-thirds said working from home has improved their work-life balance, and 33% are actively job searching. It's also hitting tech jobs, too. They're up 15% from 6 months ago, per analysis by the National Foundation for American Policy based on data from EMSI job posting analytics. Indeed, told Axios that U.S. software development job postings in September were up 73% compared with February, while total U.S. job postings are up about 43%. LinkedIn says the number of U.S. job openings for the software and IT industry has grown 119% since the start of the pandemic. Recruiting software company ICIMS told Axios that job openings for tech occupations are up 69% since January. Which may be why Amazon has announced they are letting employees work from home indefinitely, and individual teams can set their own approaches. No one-size-fits-all anymore. Pew Research adds some color. Gen Z, or those born after 1997, are interested in the tech space. 3 in every 10 members of Gen Z say software developer is the role they are most interested in after college. Overall, the September employment report shows only 194,000 jobs added. The hiring surge predicted for September did not come to pass. The message? Workers are looking for both safety and compensation. Why do we care? There's an interesting piece in the New Yorker I'm referencing that highlights how the confusion plays to executives, allowing them to reduce confusion over their reopening plans, particularly without clear metrics, to the end. I'll offer there's also an unwillingness to admit they can't force employees, and it's easier to leave things vague rather than cede the argument completely. We care, because I'd also make an argument here, that for business leaders, particularly small business ones, there's an opportunity to differentiate. Designing a clear option that doesn't look like the past can be a draw. Diverse benefits, 4-day work weeks, or task-only based metrics, or higher pay regardless of location, all could attract employees. There's also space for broadening the net, hiring those younger or less experienced and training them now rather than waiting. There are humans out there looking for other options. Good enough rather than perfect might be the answer. I talked about workers. Now, how about customers? A new survey of the National Association of State Chief Information Officers, quoting State Scoop. 94% said the pandemic had either somewhat or dramatically increased the demand for digital government services. While the public health emergency has cooled somewhat over the course of the year, citizens' growing expectations that their state governments be accessible online has prompted a surge in development, with one CIO telling the survey they oversaw 10 years' worth of deployments in 8 months. More broadly than just governments, Tech Republic looks at the SMB market in a new poll. Quoting the article, last year, 60% of respondents said that COVID-19 forced them to alter their digital transformation plans. That number increased to 62% this year. Digital transformation priorities also changed year over year. In 2020, the majority of respondents, at 68%, focused on implementing remote digital tech that could facilitate collaboration, digital and online training, 56%, and IT and business process automation, 39%. In 2021, however, only 32% of respondents were prioritizing collaboration tech for remote workers. Further, focusing on digital and online training decreased to 26%, and IT business process automation only ranked high for 23% of respondents. Social media initiatives topped digital transformation projects for 23% of respondents last year, but that number decreased to 8% this year. By far, digital capabilities centered around collaboration tools brought the greatest benefit for 42% of respondents in 2021. Cloud-based computing systems such as HR, CRM, ERP, and Office systems benefited 17% of respondents, and 8% of respondents cited digital analytics as the digital tech delivering the most benefit. And Tech Aisle 2, with a warning of uncertainty. The most significant proportion of SMBs, 42% of small businesses and 32% of mid-market firms, state that they are unsure of what the next 10 to 15 years will look like for their industry. Other SMBs worry about their ability to cope with the pace of change. An average of about 25% of SMBs report that they are struggling to keep up with the pace of change, and nearly 20% state that they do not know if they will be able to compete over the next decade. Against this backdrop, a cadre of forward-looking organizations, 15% of small businesses, roughly a quarter of mid-market firms, are battling barriers to become a digital business by 2030. Why do we care? Because we're also not going back to what was from technology implementations. The landscape is moving pretty fast. Those priorities shifted in just 1 year, probably because they addressed those issues in 2020 around collaboration because they had to. Now companies are moving on to new priorities and struggling to keep up, too. In my editorial this weekend, I pushed back on those who aren't embracing change, not at a reckless speed, but the core idea that technology services firms need to help in this space. The pace of change and the confusion on the future is a space to change paths in, but not moving along leaves one behind faster than ever. Microsoft has revealed they defended against a 2.4 terabyte per second DDoS attack back in August. Targeted specifically against an Azure customer in Europe, it came in 3 bursts over 10 minutes. The company also revealed that Russia accounted for most state-sponsored hacking detected by Microsoft over the past year, with a 58% share, mostly targeting government agencies and think tanks in the US, followed by Ukraine, Britain, and European NATO members. China, meanwhile, accounted for fewer than 1 in 10 of the state-backed hacking attempts Microsoft detected, but was successful 44% of the time in breaking into targeted networks, Microsoft said in its second annual Digital Defense Report, which covers July 2020 through June 2021. That's from the AP. Untangled looked at the budgets here, their 4th annual SMB IT security report. Compared to 2020, SMBs have increased their annual IT security budgets. More small businesses, defined as those under 25 employees, are making investments in IT. In 2020, only 28% had annual budgets of $1,000 to $5,000, compared to 35% in 2021. Half, 50% of SMBs now have the majority of their employees working back in the office. However, 41% have transitioned a quarter or more of their workers to a hybrid work model permanently. Continued movements by governments. The Australian government has set a new series of criminal offenses for people who use ransomware. This includes incident reporting for companies over $100 million per year. These will move through the legislative process to become law. This while the White House is hosting a series of meetings today and tomorrow on how to address ransomware. Russia is not in attendance. That said, Randori dug into the attack surface of organizations in a new report, assigning a temptation score to assets to understand those exposed assets. A great headline: 1 in 15 organizations run an actively exploited version of SolarWinds. 25% have RDP exposed. 15% are running outdated versions of IIS 6. The list goes on and on. Now, why do we care? The idea of reputational damage being a motivator to upgrade is one I've put out to pasture. The Randori researchers cite ignorance, not negligence, as the reason for the current state of affairs. That leaves out another, financial incentive. I've argued that the financial incentives just aren't strong enough now to change behavior. String this together. The budgets are increasing, attention is also increasing, yet big sections of the market are just behind. This isn't an easy problem to be sure. There are massive threats out there that are incredibly well organized. There are signs of progress, this issue being examined at the highest level of governments. Just don't expect the risk analysis to change quickly. Yesterday, I talked about the return to the office. Today, how about the return of the holiday party? Protocol with a piece examining the upcoming holiday season. Are company holiday parties coming back? One events company cites only between 10 and 20% of their normal bookings. Google and Facebook are skipping any major holiday parties, as confirmed by the article. Now, why do we care? It's Q4, and this is the exact time to be thinking about this question. Company culture is a theme I return to often, and opportunities to establish that culture are important. Uncertainty eats away at culture. In roughly 2 months, company will be executing whatever plans they come up with now. So now is the time to make your choices. Linking to the worker sentiment that I've been reporting on over and over again, employees want to feel safe. Find your solution that emphasizes that. Microsoft has agreed to study, via an independent third party, the impact of making its device easier to repair and to make changes by the end of 2022. This made after the shareholder advocacy group As You Sow filed a shareholder resolution on the matter, which they have now withdrawn. Why do we care? This is a big victory for right to repair. Microsoft is a big player here in consumer sentiment, particularly when you include their Xbox products. Think advocacy doesn't work? Here's an example of how it does, and that's why we care. That independent report is going to be a thing to see. Did you know Cisco helps managed services providers directly know about the Cisco Partner Program? Focused on helping partners combine managed services expertise and service creation with innovative Cisco technology and proven go-to-market resources. There's a program option for you. With provider pricing, MDF, and marketing resources, coupled with Cisco's leading technologies including Meraki, Duo, and Umbrella, learn more with the link right in the show notes. Let's start with 4 charts about the small business recovery. Link in the show notes, and so reading them, the stats that jump out. 51% of companies have unfilled job positions. 30% are planning to raise pay. 4% say poor sales are their biggest concern, and 46% are planning to raise prices. West Monroe's quarterly executive poll for Q4 indicates that executives have a positive outlook about the U.S. economy. 75% are bullish, while 25% are bearish, according to the report. Yet at the same time, 18% of those executive respondents listed the Great Resignation as the biggest impact on their business in 2021. Then research from job site search ladders, 14.6% of high-paying jobs are now remote. That's up from 12.8% in Q2 2021 and 3.69% back in Q4 2019. Of course, companies are doing more monitoring too. Digital.com, a business review platform, looked at monitoring software. Most employers surveyed used monitoring software, and about 14% hadn't notified staff about it. 81% said productivity increased after installing the monitoring software. IT employers were among the most likely to be using tracking software. Finally, if you want to dig into what's broken in the hiring system, Recode has a piece to dive into. The theme? A lot of jobs out there are not ones people want. And beyond that, job seekers are having trouble finding or connecting to the ones they do, and systems that screen are not helping. Why do we care? The market does not have a sales or buying problem, and prices can go up. It has a labor problem. This data is important to use for strategic planning. We all see the end of the year coming and our 2022 plans on the horizon. I'm not going to claim I have some magic solution on the hiring problem. I am going to observe that seeing this mismatch is an opportunity, be it a smaller company's ability to be nimble or a larger one's ability to leverage people and process, and maybe not technology, to address it. It's tempting to try and separate business data from society, but they are linked. Black residents in the rural South are nearly twice as likely as their white counterparts to lack home internet access, according to a new study from the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. The study also found that nearly 1 in 4 Black residents in the rural South doesn't have the option to subscribe to high-speed broadband, compared to just 3.8% of Americans nationwide. At Microsoft, a leaked email chain is spreading that provides insights into gender discrimination. The chain includes a spreadsheet of more than 1,200 employees' salaries. The core of the discussion? Pay and promotion disparity between men and women. Business Insider has broken down the data, and I've included a link for those who want to dig in. It puts into perspective the need for the investment in broadband. The FCC announced this week more than $1.1 billion from the Emergency Connectivity Fund to go to students, school staff, and libraries. Why do we care? So I'm also including a story by Protocol about the opening up of salary discussions. I just came off talking about hiring, and here I have stories related to the pitfalls around people. No hot takes from me. Problems themselves are areas of opportunity, and that's the theme of the day. Organizations looking to lead can leverage all of this. Flexera looked at software audits, and from their polling, 46% of respondents were audited by Microsoft for usage in the last 3 years. 30% noted Oracle, and VMware and Adobe were noted as the others to round out the 4 who took the most time. 24% of respondents paid more than $1 million in true-up costs over the past 3 years. One small reason to continue to note the strength of IT and business services, IDC says the space will grow 3.4% this year globally. It's 2.4% specifically in the US and 3.7% next year. ISG too with good news. Managed services contract values increasing 22% over the prior year. The analyst is quite bullish on managed services, saying that and as-a-service platforms grew 40%. Managed services was up 17% specifically, and they're citing a growth rate of 10%. Why do we care? I believe a lot of basic infrastructure-type services are going away. I'll note that smart consulting on things like what software are we using is not. And with cloud SaaS, it's getting more complicated. That's all space where services are needed. It might look a bit more consultative, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. IT services are strong. It's what's in them that matters. 2 things on the legal front to note. First, last week, California signed into law the Silenced No More Act. This brings legal protection for speaking out about discrimination based on race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, ancestry, disability, and age, and is anticipated to impact NDAs specifically. Second, Microsoft has agreed to an independent human rights review of some of their government and law enforcement deals. This is in response to a shareholder proposal related to these contracts. Microsoft has agreed to publish the report next year, and the shareholder proposal was withdrawn. Why do we care? Ticking the tick box for the regulation trend, and also the technology responsibility one. Earlier in the week, I highlighted falling confidence in tech. That brings scrutiny, and that brings government involvement. Some will whine about that, and savvy ones are deploying resources to understand and manage it. I know which camp I'm in. So, 2 to ponder for the weekend. First, TechCrunch profiles why private equity is interested in the managed services provider space. The reasons we know, quoting the article, a strong demand trend, low risk of obsolescence, a sticky service that attracts long-term customers and high recurring revenues, strong cash flow margins, and a relatively asset-light business. The article posits a number of 40,000 MSPs in the US as of 2019, implying fragmentation, and that only 30 to 40% of the market is penetrated by MSPs. Which leads me to my second story, an interesting open source project coming out of the community itself. A project called the Cyber Drain Improved Partner Portal, or SIP. Quoting the announcement, Microsoft partners are waiting for Lighthouse, they're waiting for RMM tools to catch up, or they are using a tool that's not evolving or asking for global admins without MFA. I got kind of sick of this, so these last 3 weeks I deep dove into M365, into the issues we've had, and decided to make an open source solution for this. A solution that solves the major gripes we all have with current partner administration, stuff like creating shared mailboxes or converting them for our managed tenants or applying a specific set of standards. Why do we care? Clearly a hot space, which we see from the figures earlier and from the investment interest. My reason to ponder is where the innovation will come from. There's some needs, and they're very well laid out here. Here's an MSP effort to fill the gaps in the market, because their existing providers haven't. Not an endorsement from me. An observation that this is quite healthy, and I'm excited to see what might come of this, because the interesting stuff is not happening in the typical places. You're going to have to step out of your comfort zone. If it's tried and true, it's also not disruptive. And I think this market is ready to see some disruption. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSPradio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.